Body language. What is everyone getting wrong?
Almost everything. The myths that circulate: crossed arms means you're closed off. Looking left means you're lying. Touching your nose means deception. None of that holds up under actual field conditions. I watch people exhibit every single one of those behaviors while telling the complete truth. What people get wrong is that they're looking for single signals, one gesture, one expression. That's not how behavioral reading works. You're looking for clusters. You're looking for changes from baseline. You're looking for the moment something shifts, not the moment something appears. A person who always crosses their arms isn't telling you anything. A person who had their arms open for 20 minutes and suddenly crosses them the moment you mention price, that's information. The other thing people get wrong is they think body language is about catching lies. It isn't. It's about understanding what someone is actually experiencing in real time. Those are completely different objectives. One makes you paranoid, the other makes you effective.
How do you know someone has already decided no before they speak?
The body leaves before the person does. There are three things I watch for. The first is foot orientation. People point their feet toward what they want and away from what they don't. If someone's feet have rotated toward the exit while their face is still smiling at you, they've already left. The smile is social management. The feet are the truth. The second is hand withdrawal. When we engage with something we find interesting or valuable, we move toward it. Hands come forward. When we disengage, hands pull back or drop below the table. A client whose hands just disappeared from the surface is a client who has mentally exited the conversation. The third is what I call the compression sequence. The forehead tightens slightly, the lips compress, the head levels. That relaxed slight tilt disappears. All of this happens in about 2 seconds, and it happens before they've consciously decided how to respond to you. By the time they say, "I need to think about it," they decided 3 minutes ago. The words are just the formal announcement.
Give me one interrogation technique that works in a sales room.
The presumptive. In interrogation, instead of asking someone if they did something, which immediately activates their defenses, you assume they did it and ask a question from that position. You don't ask, "Did you have any concerns about the proposal?" You say, "I imagine the timeline is probably the bigger obstacle here than the cost." Now watch what happens. If you're right, they feel understood. They lean in. They confirm it and tell you more. If you're wrong, they correct you. And the correction tells you exactly what the real obstacle is. Either way, you got the information without asking a direct question, without triggering the resistance that direct questions always trigger. I use this in rooms where people had been trained for months not to answer questions. It worked there. It will work in a sales meeting.
Questions or statements? Which one actually works?
Statements, every time. And I want to be precise about why, because it's not obvious. When you ask someone a question, you hand them control. They decide what to give you. They filter. They manage. They present a curated version of their actual position. That's what humans do when asked something directly. They perform an answer rather than reveal one. When you make a statement, you generate a reaction. And reactions are not curated. They come before the filter activates. The body responds first. Then the verbal response follows. And in that gap between the stimulus and the managed response is where the real information lives. The CIA understood this decades ago. You don't ask a target what they know. You tell them something slightly inaccurate and watch them correct you. The correction contains everything. Sales professionals who have figured this out operate completely differently from everyone else. They don't pitch. They don't interrogate. They make precise statements and observe what happens.
What are you watching in the first 30 seconds?
Baseline. Before I can read any deviation, I need to know what normal looks like for this specific person. And the first 30 seconds is when I collect that. How do they carry themselves walking in? How do they sit? Where do their hands naturally rest? What's their default blink rate? How much do they gesture when they're relaxed? What does their breathing look like when there's no pressure in the room? All of that is baseline. And everything I observe for the rest of the conversation is measured against it. This is the mistake most people make. They walk into a meeting and immediately start talking. They sacrifice the most valuable 30 seconds, the window where the other person is at their most unguarded, just to launch into their pitch faster. I never talked in the first 30 seconds. I let the other person settle. I watched them relax into the room. And by the time I said my first word, I already had a map.
Does personality type change everything in sales?
It changes what works. There are two fundamental buyer types. The first is what you'd call the conscientious type, analytical, skeptical, detail-oriented. They want data. They want process. They want to understand exactly how something works before they commit. If you bring them enthusiasm and vision without substance, they shut down. You've lost them. The second type is high in what psychologists call openness, creative, entrepreneurial, possibility-oriented. They respond to vision. They respond to what could be. If you bury them in data and process, their eyes glaze over. You've also lost them. The catastrophic mistake is running the same approach on both. Most salespeople have one mode, one pitch, one energy, and they hit about 50% of the room, if they're lucky. The best operators I've encountered, in interrogation and in business, read the room first and choose their approach second. The approach is not the skill. The reading is the skill.
What's the moment most salespeople completely miss?
The micro-expression of recognition. There is a specific moment in every sales conversation where the other person makes an internal decision, not a final decision, an internal shift. Something clicks, something you said landed differently than everything before it. And for 1 to 2 seconds, that shift is visible on their face before they've managed it back to neutral. It looks like a brief relaxation around the eyes, sometimes a slight forward movement, sometimes an involuntary micronod. Most salespeople miss it because they're focused on what they're saying next, running their own internal script, and the signal passes unnoticed. If you catch that moment, you have your pivot point. That's what actually landed. Everything after it should build on that element, not move away from it. The salespeople who close consistently are not the best talkers. They're the best watchers.
Where exactly do you look first when reading someone?
The forehead and the hands, in that order. The forehead reveals stress before any other part of the face. The area between the eyes responds to psychological discomfort before the person has decided how to react. It's involuntary and fast. Then the hands. Extraordinarily expressive because most people don't monitor them consciously. The face people manage, the voice people manage, the hands they largely forget. Hands moving forward indicate interest. Hands pulling back indicate the opposite. Hands becoming very still and controlled, not natural stillness, but deliberate stillness, means someone is managing their response. And the management itself is information. I don't spend much time on eyes. Eyes are the most managed part of the face precisely because everyone knows they're being watched. Forehead and hands are where the truth leaks out.
Why does the brain not defend against a statement?
Because the brain's defense system is triggered by perceived interrogation. A direct question, especially about something sensitive, registers as a social threat. The threat of giving away something unintended. That activates a filter. You become more careful. The answer you give is managed. A statement doesn't trigger that response. It invites a reaction, not a decision, and reactions bypass the filter. This is why elicitation works on people trained not to give information. The training prepares them to resist questions. It doesn't prepare them for the pull of correcting something inaccurate. That pull is deeper than training, almost reflexive. In a sales context, the person across from you hasn't been trained to resist anything. Their defenses are far lower, which means statements are even more effective than in an interrogation room. The technique becomes almost frictionless.
Conscientious buyer or creative type, completely different approach?
Completely. The conscientious buyer needs to feel safe before they buy. Safe means I understand what I'm getting. I understand the risk. If there are gaps in that understanding, they won't move, not because they don't want it, but because uncertainty is more uncomfortable than the desire to acquire. Slow down, give them detail, don't push. If you push before they're ready, they withdraw and don't come back. The open creative type is the opposite, pulled by possibility, not anchored by process. If you spend too much time on mechanics, terms, timeline, fine print, you're moving them away from the emotional state that makes them want to commit. Stay in the vision. Let them feel the outcome. Details come later. The decision comes first. Same product, same room, completely different conversation. The only way to know which conversation you're in is to read who's sitting across from you before you start talking.
And the feet, what do they tell you?
The feet are the most honest part of the body. We spend enormous energy managing our faces, our voices, our words. We don't think about our feet, below the visual field of most conversations. And because we're not monitoring them, they operate without interference from the conscious mind. Feet point toward interest and away from discomfort. An engaged person has their feet oriented toward you. A disengaged person has their feet rotated away, often toward the exit. The body is preparing to leave before the person has decided to leave. In a sales context, if you see them rotate away mid-conversation, something just went wrong. Address it immediately. Don't continue with your script as if it didn't happen. Most salespeople have no idea what the person's feet are doing, and the feet are broadcasting the actual state of the conversation the entire time.
How do you figure out someone's personality in 60 seconds?
Give them something unstructured and watch how they respond. In the first 60 seconds, there are always moments of ambiguity, a pause, an open-ended comment. What someone does in those moments tells you almost everything. The conscientious type fills ambiguity with questions. They want structure before content, uncomfortable with open-endedness, and they move quickly to close it. The open creative type fills ambiguity with ideas. They run with the open space, make associations, go somewhere unexpected, energized by lack of structure rather than unsettled by it. Watch how they entered the room, whether they immediately began organizing, aligning papers, adjusting their chair, or whether they dropped into the chair and started talking. 60 seconds is more than enough. Most people spend it talking about themselves. I spend it observing.
What does the handshake tell you before the conversation even starts?
More than most people realize. The handshake is the first physical contact, and physical contact releases neurochemicals that produce an immediate judgment, a felt sense of whether you trust this person or you don't. That judgment happens before any conscious evaluation, before they've heard your pitch. Too firm signals aggression, too limp signals disengagement. The handshake that builds trust is full contact, palm to palm, moderate pressure, 1 to 2 seconds. No bone-crushing grip, no dead fish. But what I'm actually watching is what happens in the split second before it. Whether someone extends their hand early, openness, or waits until the last moment, caution. Whether they make eye contact or look away. Whether their grip changes pressure during the hold. By the time I've shaken someone's hand, I have a preliminary read on their confidence, their social comfort, and whether they're operating from openness or defense. The conversation hasn't started, but the assessment has.
What do the best salespeople do that nobody teaches?
They read the room before they enter it. Not the physical room, the psychological room. Before they say a single word, they've assessed the baseline state of the person across from them. Energy, posture, orientation, open or guarded, analytical or intuitive, present or distracted. And then, this is the part nobody teaches, they match their opening to what they observed, not to their script, to the actual person sitting in front of them. The other thing the best ones do is stay comfortable with silence. Most salespeople are terrified of it. They fill it, keep talking, over-explain, and every time they do that, they signal discomfort, and discomfort is contagious. The best use silence as a tool. Make a statement, let it land, wait. Collect information that tells them exactly what to do next. Silence is not dead space. Silence is data.
What separates someone who can sell anything from someone who can't?
They understand that selling is not about the product. It never was. The product is almost irrelevant in the moment of the sale. What's being sold is a feeling, that this decision is safe, that it's right, that the person across from you understands you. The salespeople who struggle are selling the product, features, benefits, price points, making a logical argument, confused when logic doesn't close. Logic doesn't close. Emotion closes. Then logic is used to justify the emotional decision after the fact. The people who can sell anything have internalized one thing: your job is not to persuade. Your job is to make the other person feel understood. Because the moment someone feels genuinely understood, resistance drops, defenses lower. The conversation shifts from adversarial to collaborative. I spent 17 years in rooms with people actively trying not to give me anything. The ones who eventually gave me what I needed, it was never because I out-argued them. It was because they felt understood. Sales is the same dynamic. The product is just the pretext. The real transaction is human.